What we can do with experimentation is how we frame it. So as opposed to framing it as to that this is the direction that we're going, but using that experimentation to actually understand more of are we tackling the right problem right now? Is this the right thinking of we're doing? So by framing it as that experiment as an opportunity for us to give answers rather than to go for a solution, I think there wouldn't be failing or there will be success or failing, because at the end of the day, the objective that we're trying to get is to get answers. So you're still gonna get an answers, whether that answer is good answers or the answer that you want to hear or the answer that you don't want to hear. I hope that helped. So the framing is everything. So how to change that mindset is framing that experimentation is an opportunity for us to really test it to the market or test it with our user if we are on the right path.
Yeah, I have encountered several situations where a product or a service was either unintentionally created or modified, and those modifications would have ethical consequences. So one of the examples that I was working on in a past life, really, with an innovation team. So their product was a GPS tracker, and this tracker was meant for pets and, for anything that you see as valuable. However, I think one of the key aspects that was overlooked or ignored was that there could be, grievous consequences or dangerous consequences for domestic violence scenarios. So there are many such situations like this, and some of them big and some of them little. However, in the real world, you can't really avoid these situations. But what we can do as designers is really to have evidence, both quantitative and qualitative, to highlight the reactions, the feedback, the expectations that people might have about the product and present this back to stakeholders. So when doing this presentation back or playback to stakeholders, what we might do is it's really important to join the dots for them. So for example, if you want to speak to a finding that has dangerous tendencies, for example, you back it up with any other data there is in existence to support your finding, including any similar market research or analytics. And this will hopefully have people sitting up and taking notes.
Build relationship and trying to understand. So really, if you apply your design thinking mindset or your human-centered approach, which is that first side of the diamond, the understanding and the discovering part, apply that to your career too. So what would you do? Getting to know the organization, getting to know the people that you're working with, getting to know the cultures, the design maturity, really be open to an opportunity. So coming into that role to understand rather than to solve the problem, because that's the key, and then you solve the problem together.
If you look at the Danish design ladder as a guide to rate where a business should be in terms of design maturity, there are typically 4 stages. So if you look at it as a ladder, the bottom rung is non-design, the next rung is designer styling, the third rung is designer's process, and finally designer strategy. So non-design, the first rung, is where design is primarily led by untrained designers or designers who are doing the bidding of others who are in product development and so on. So the customer perspective really doesn't play a part in decisions. The second stage or rung is designer styling. So where design is really looked at as a way to make things look nice at the end of a process. So it's more about the aesthetic, and there's little thought given to the overall experience or the different aspects or relational aspects of the experience. The third rung is designer's process. So this is where design is not considered as a separate separate process. As such, it is just looked at as a way of thinking, and the methods of design are built into every stage of the product or service development. So the customer lens is essentially brought into every stage, and the customer's aspect is looked at. So, for instance, what problems are we solving for is a question that you would ask yourself at every stage in the product or service development process. And finally, design and strategy is a level where design is embedded in the strategic team. It is in the leadership team. It is something that is a part of the business concept, and it is employed, more as a way to envision the future of the company and plan, using design as a wayfinder.
Early as possible, because depend on your design process. Let's say even if you're still in the discovery, really trying to understand why certain things built a certain way, or what do we have currently in our system or in our platform. So from a technical point of view, what are the limitations, and from the legacy system that we have, if we have. So really trying to understand that complexity and constraint from technicality before you even start designing is crucial. So design at the end of the day is about uncovering, it's about problem solving, it's about working together, it's about empathizing. And empathizing means with users, with the customers, but also trying to empathize with our partners, why they can't do a certain kind of things because of the limitations. So as early as possible.
So as a practitioner, I'm sure you're bound to meet stakeholders who don't see the value of design, who may have a negative commentary or a passive-aggressive behavior in and out of meetings, or they might try and create obstacles or delay or derail the project that you're working on, or they might say that they know their customer really well without any proper analytics and research. So the way I deal with this personally is to understand what these stakeholders' KPIs are. And I typically would try to speak their language to highlight how I, as a designer, could assist them with achieving that KPI. So I see designers as being a bridge. So speaking our own jargon or speaking to the design process becomes really difficult to achieve the purpose of being a designer. So it becomes a barrier to our purpose. So that's the first thing I would remember, that is to not speak design jargon, but really get on the side of the stakeholder and understand their KPIs. The second thing to remember is to be very gentle with them. So we need to practice emotional intelligence no matter how difficult they are. So we'll need to get, lose our egos and acknowledge them, acknowledge their knowledge in the space. And let's say you've tested their ideas with customers and they were all rejected by the customers. So the way you would want to frame that is to focus on the learnings that came out of those tests, rather than using that as an opportunity to sort of belittle them. So it's a long journey, but the idea is to constantly be practice being a designer. And that would be to practice emotional intelligence ourselves, and also to be the bridge.
Design maturity can be driven by anyone, not only mid or senior level, junior, or even non-designers. The key to that is managing expectation and communication, and also, again, I'm going to come back to empathy. Empathizing with others is the key to drive design maturity. So that means we're not become a symbolic designers. What I mean by that, we're not measuring ourselves just by output, by how many prototypes we're doing, by how many customer testing we're doing. That's all well and good. However, at the end of the day, we can measure ourselves based on impact. How many people actually, open to doing what we're doing, on how many people open to work with us. And that can be done by trying to understand each other, for you to take people on a journey. So back to tips, whether you're junior designers, mid designers, or non-designers that have worked with designers, is really to empathize with people that you're working with, and to speak in a language that are understandable by people, and removing the jargon, and try to work based on impact.